The Scarecrow that wouldn't bow. The first time Brenda Holloway's SUV ripped through my cornfield at dawn, it was like a buffalo had broken loose from logic. My morning coffee froze midway to my lips as I stood barefoot on the porch. The red sun was still clawing its way above the horizon when the shriek of tires ripped across the earth, flattening rows of corn and annihilating poor Sam, the Scarecrow my father and I built back when I still had skinned knees and untamed curls. Sam went down hard. The SUV's steel grille caught him midsection, splintering his wooden spine with a sickening crack and sending his straw-stuffed head flying onto the hood. For a breathless second, it rested there like a gruesome greeting card, then rolled off, tumbling into the churned mud. Brenda barely tapped the brakes. She reversed, slow and deliberate, over Sam's remains as though grinding straw into the dirt was some sort of personal vendetta. Then she vanished, tires spitting soil in her wake. That's when I knew this wasn't just a rude neighbor. Brenda Holloway was a tempest wrapped in an HOA badge, and she had decided my farm was her playground. Sam wasn't just a scarecrow. He had watched over these fields for over 20 years, his floppy hat, his hand-stitched flannel, his one-button eye. Kids in town loved him. Crows gave him respectful distance. Every fall, I'd repaint his goofy grin, and during the town's harvest festival, folks lined up to take pictures beside him. He belonged here, part of the land like the groaning barn or the rust-flecked tractor that wheezed to life each frosty morning. But to Brenda, Sam was an eyesore. Her exact word, spat out with that smug twist of her lip during one of her rare patrols along the property line. She'd moved in just 6 months prior, snapping up the old Dawson estate across the road and promptly setting out to transform our sleepy corner of Iowa into a sanitized suburban tableau of plastic fences, manicured hedges, and HOA-approved everything. Wildflowers? Too unkempt. Rustic charm? Too peasant. Scarecrows? Apparently downright offensive. At first, I thought she'd warm up. Most outsiders do. There's a magic in small-town life, the kind that erodes hard edges. But Brenda didn't soften. She calcified. First, she complained about my fence. Too rustic. Then her teacup poodle, a skittish little creature with the soul of a soap bubble, got spooked by Sam. That's when the comments turned to orders. I dismissed her as any self-respecting farmer would. I figured she'd grumble a while then move on. She didn't. Chaos, instead, became her language. The first time Sam was knocked over, I chalked it up to wind, or maybe a slick tire slipping on post-rain mud. I rebuilt him by dusk, not perfect, but proud. 2 days later, he was down again. This time, tire tracks led directly from her driveway. And there, stamped boldly on his flattened chest, was her SUV's bumper imprint. A steel calling card. I might have laughed if my jaw hadn't been clenched so hard. Next time I saw her at the feed store, she smirked and said, "Maybe put him somewhere safer," then winked. I'm not one to throw down over straw and burlap. But I don't let anyone, trample my land without answering for it. Sam wasn't just decor. He was family. Built by Dad back when I was young, barefoot and chasing hens. Every dent and patch stitched into him was a chapter. And Brenda? Brenda was erasing history. The third attack was deliberate. I was in town grabbing lumber. When I returned, Sam was annihilated, splinters, scattered straw, flannel torn like battle flags. A note was pinned to the post where he once stood. It a real decoration. Brenda. That was the moment the anger bloomed, not just for Sam, but for the arrogance. The gall of someone thinking they could waltz in and dictate tradition like she bought the rights with her mortgage. She'd drawn first blood. That night, under a sky smeared with dying sun, I carried Sam's remains into the barn. I laid him gently on my father's old workbench, where tools still slept beneath dust and memory. Brenda hadn't just destroyed a scarecrow, she'd handed me a reason. I stared at the padlocked workshop. My father's teachings whispered back to me, if it shouldn't break, don't build it like it will. The next morning, I unlocked the door. The scent of oil and old pine filled my lungs. The welder sat under its tarp like a slumbering beast. Steel pipes leaned against the far wall. Scraps of iron, bolts, mesh, all waiting for purpose. Brenda had her war. Now, she'd meet Sam 2.0. I drafted plans on the back of old feed invoices. Sam would look the same, floppy hat, stitched grin, flannel button down, but beneath the surface, he'd carry a steel spine. Welded joints, rebar arms, his base anchored 2 feet into concrete. A monument. A message. For days, sparks danced in the barn. I worked by lamplight, radio humming blues, the wind outside whispering secrets. Brenda drove by during the day, likely assuming she'd won. I didn't look up. Let her believe the silence was surrender. The town started whispering. At the hardware store, Earl raised a brow when I bought 5 feet of steel pipe and enough cement to sink a bridge. Building a fence or a fortress? He asked. Something like that. When Sam was finally complete, he stood tall, unassuming to the eye, but immovable. I drove him back to his rightful post just as dawn kissed the horizon. Steam rose from the soil. I rocked on the porch, coffee in hand, waiting. Brenda came early. Fog curled around her SUV's tires as she aimed directly at Sam. No hesitation. Just entitlement on wheels. She gunned it, tearing through the corn, windshield wipers slapping. The sound of impact echoed like a gunshot. Sam didn't move. Brenda's bumper crumpled. Her headlights burst. The SUV shuddered, hood smoking, airbags erupting like startled ghosts. I sipped my coffee, let the steam warm my lip as I strolled over. Brenda, dazed and furious, clawed at the airbag, stumbled out, and pointed at Sam like he'd betrayed her. You booby-trapped it, she shrieked. You set a trap. I'll sue. For what? I asked. Building a scarecrow? You rigged it. You trespassed and slammed into an immovable object. That's not a trap, it's physics. She stomped, red-faced. I'll call the sheriff. Please do. An hour later, Sheriff Clay Daniels showed up. Brenda was mid-tantrum. I kept quiet. Let her dig. Sheriff Clay examined Sam, tapped his steel chest, tugged at the flannel. Well constructed, he said. Bit unorthodox, but nothing illegal. He's a menace. Brenda screeched. He's on his land, the sheriff replied. She sputtered. I'm pressing charges. Clay shrugged. Then you'll need to explain why you were driving through his cornfield. She glared at me, at Sam, at the small gathering of townsfolk who'd wandered over. Earl, Maggie, even little Jason from the diner, holding a chocolate milk and watching wide-eyed. Brenda's SUV got towed. The hush that followed her departure felt like spring after a brutal storm. She'd underestimated the land and the people on it. But she wasn't done. A week later, a wax-sealed letter arrived. Legal letterhead. Claims of malicious entrapment, mental distress, property endangerment. I laughed so hard I spilled my coffee. I saved the letter, stuffed it between junk mail and a coupon flyer. Then, I handed Sheriff Clay a thumb drive footage from the trail cams, barn GoPros, and porch cam. Every time she struck Sam, her smirking face, her taunts, the note. Sheriff Clay grunted. You sure about this? It's time, I said. By week's end, Brenda was parading around the diner, claiming she'd bury me in court. Saturday morning, the papers hit. Trespassing, vandalism, property damage, harassment. Her face turned sheet white outside the hardware store when she saw it on the town bulletin. Her HOA dropped her. Her insurance denied the claim. Fees mounted. 2 weeks later, she packed up. A rental SUV, suitcases piled high, been strapped with bungee cords. I stood by the fence, arms folded, watching her go. She didn't look back. The neighbors clapped. Jason saluted Sam. Earl placed a sheriff's badge sticker on his flannel shirt. That night, under a sunset dripping orange and plumb across the sky, I raised my coffee to Sam. You stood tall, pal, I whispered. Taught her the old ways. Sam, ever silent, didn't reply. But the rustle of straw in the breeze sounded an awful lot like a chuckle. In the end, Brenda tried to bring her war to my field. But Sam, the steel-hearted sentinel, didn't bow. And neither did I.